You know that moment when you open your banking app and instead of immediately slamming it shut out of panic, you actually feel okay about what you see? When you stop doing mental math at the grocery store, wondering if buying vegetables means surviving on instant noodles for the rest of the week. There's a specific number where that shift kicks in, and it's probably not what you've been told. Most financial voices out there will say you need $1 million to feel truly wealthy, or that a six-figure income is the magic entry point. But here's what they keep getting wrong. There's a much smaller milestone, one that completely rewires how you relate to money. Once you reach it, the entire game feels different. That number is $20,000. My name is Nick, and I spend a genuinely unhealthy amount of time thinking about money, the psychology behind it, and why some people seem to build wealth almost naturally, while others stay locked in the same cycles for years, even decades. If you're someone who wants to understand how wealth actually gets built, not just hope it somehow happens, go ahead and hit subscribe, and give this a thumbs up if it shifts something for you. Now, before we get into why $20,000 is such a turning point, let me ask you something. When you picture building wealth, what image comes to mind? Some kid who grew up with money and never had to stress about it, or maybe someone grinding through years of sacrifice, $1 at a time, slowly inching forward. The truth is, wealth doesn't actually build the way most people picture it. Here's what really happens. Certain financial thresholds exist like invisible walls. Cross them, and the rules completely change. $20,000 is the first major one, the line that separates people who will build lasting wealth from people who will spend their whole lives chasing the next paycheck. And the wild part? Most people don't even know this threshold exists. Think about pushing a massive rock up a steep hill. Starting is brutal. You're straining every muscle, barely moving, and genuinely questioning if any of it is working. But once you build enough momentum, something shifts. The rock starts carrying itself, and when it finally crests the top, it rolls down the other side on its own. $20,000 is that crest. Everything before it feels like you're fighting gravity. Everything after it feels like gravity has switched to your side. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting, and this part surprises most people. The shift isn't only mathematical. It's not just that you have a larger base earning slightly bigger returns. The real transformation happens inside your head. When you have nothing saved, your brain defaults into what psychologists describe as survival mode. Every financial choice gets processed through a filter of fear and scarcity. You take the first job offer that shows up, even a bad one, because you can't afford to walk away. You stay in situations that drain you because leaving feels too dangerous. You say yes to things you don't want because the money matters more than anything else right now. This isn't just about being cautious. When your brain is in survival mode, it literally cannot shift its attention toward growth. It's like trying to plan a trip while your house is actively burning. Every neuron is locked on to the immediate threat. But something genuinely remarkable happens once you push past $20,000. Your brain gets breathing room. Instead of, how do I make it to Friday? You start thinking, how do I make this money grow? Instead of reacting to every financial fire, you become someone who builds ahead of it. Research from Vanguard found that having just $2,000 in emergency savings raises financial well-being by 21%. $2,000, less than most people spend on a single vacation or a laptop upgrade. That small cushion creates a massive psychological lift because it pulls you out of pure survival thinking. When you push that buffer up to 3 to 6 months of expenses, which for most people lands somewhere around $20,000, you get another 13% improvement in financial well-being. More importantly, your brain finally has the space to think about building wealth instead of just protecting what little exists. Here's where the math becomes genuinely exciting. Say you're setting aside $1,000 a month and earning around 8% annually on your investments. Getting to your first $20,000 takes roughly 19 months of consistent discipline, a year and a half of saying no, staying focused, and resisting the urge to spend what you've saved. Not easy. Most people quit somewhere in that window. But your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It only takes about 17. Why? Because that first $20,000 is now in the game alongside your contributions, generating its own return. Same effort from you, same monthly amount, same risk level, but 2 months shaved off the clock simply because your existing money started pulling weight. That's compound interest beginning to do what it does. By the time you're building your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even more. Your money is doing an increasing share of the work while you're putting in the same effort. And once you reach $400,000 in investments, that same $20,000 increment appears in just 5 months. Not because you're doing anything differently, but because scale changed everything. The first milestone feels almost impossible. Everyone after it gets progressively easier. Now, you might assume wealthy people have access to some exclusive financial world that regular people simply can't reach. Private hedge funds, special deals, invitation-only vehicles. And while that exists at the extreme high end, it's not what drives this $20,000 phenomenon. The real mechanism is far simpler, and honestly, far more encouraging. It's just math working at a larger scale. Invest $1,000 and earn 10% in a year. You make $100. Apply that exact same 10% to $10,000, and you're looking at $1,000 in profit. Same investment, same time frame, same level of risk. This is exactly why $20,000 feels like a turning point. Before it, your returns feel almost irrelevant because the numbers are still small. A 10% return on $2,000 is $200. Nice, but not life-altering. A 10% return on $20,000 is $2,000. When you have $20,000 sitting in investments earning 8% annually, that's $1,600 flowing in over the year without you lifting a finger. Money you didn't trade your hours for. Money that arrived because your existing money was working on your behalf. The strategy is exactly the same as what someone with $1,000 can do. Same index funds, same brokerages, same principles. The only difference is scale, and that scale turns small percentage gains into real forward momentum. But here's the part most people overlook entirely, and it might actually be the most important thing in this entire video. When you save $20,000, you've built something far more valuable than a bank balance. You've fundamentally changed how your brain operates around money. And yes, that might sound like self-help noise, but stay with me because this is where things get very practical. Think about what saving $20,000 from zero actually demands. Unless you're pulling in exceptional income or living completely rent-free, this requires serious discipline. You had to monitor where every dollar was actually going. You had to say no to things you wanted so you could protect what you were building. You had to resist whatever shiny distraction showed up that week. You had to do all of this consistently for months, sometimes longer. And here's the thing that actually matters. You proved to yourself that you control your money. It doesn't control you. You became the kind of person who can delay gratification when it counts. That's not just a financial skill. That's one of the most transferable skills in existence. This identity shift shapes every financial decision you make going forward. Before $20,000, buying a $4 coffee required mental gymnastics. After it, you're not sweating those small calls anymore because you know you've handled the big ones. There's another psychological shift at this level that rarely gets discussed. You start seeing opportunities instead of only threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every surprise expense is a catastrophe. Car needs repairs, laptop dies, rent goes up. None of those are opportunities, they're emergencies that blow up your entire month. But with $20,000 as your foundation, those same events become minor friction at worst. Car needs work, annoying, manageable. Laptop dies, maybe time to upgrade. Rent goes up, time to negotiate your salary or find a better situation. Even better, you start noticing opportunities that were always there but invisible to you before. A friend is launching something and wants a small investment. Before, you'd think, interesting, and move on. Now you can actually evaluate whether $5,000 makes sense. A rental property with upside pops up. Before, you scroll past it. Now you run the numbers. Your company won't cover a career-building conference. Before, you skip it. Now you weigh the return. This is what people mean when they say money attracts money. It's not some cosmic reward system. It's that having money creates options, and options create more paths to make more money. Here's something else that happens around the $20,000 mark that will genuinely reframe how you think about budgeting. You stop obsessing over small expenses and start focusing on big ones. I know that sounds backwards, but stay with me. When your account is running near empty, every purchase becomes a decision. Name brand or generic, coffee out or made at home, premium fuel or regular. These micro calls drain mental energy because every dollar feels enormous. But once you have a real foundation, you start to see that these tiny decisions are mostly irrelevant. Skipping every coffee you'd ever buy might save you $1,000 in a year, real money, but not the thing that changes your trajectory. What actually moves the needle are the major calls: where you live, what you drive, how much you're investing. how your money is positioned. These choices can swing your net worth by tens of thousands over time. So instead of agonizing over the organic produce, you point your attention at housing costs, income growth, and investment strategy. This shift is genuinely freeing. It clears mental space for the decisions that actually move things. Now let's talk about what this does to your career, because this is where it gets really interesting. Having $20,000 saved doesn't just change your relationship with money, it changes your relationship with work entirely. When you're living check to check, you're effectively locked into whatever job you currently hold. Your boss could be a nightmare, your environment could be toxic, the work could be soul-crushing, but you can't leave because that next deposit is the only thing keeping you afloat. This puts you in an almost powerless negotiating position. You don't ask for the raise because you're afraid they'll push back. You don't hold firm on unreasonable requests because you need the role more than they need you. You don't explore other paths because taking time for interviews feels too risky. $20,000 changes all of that. Suddenly, you have what I call walking away money. You could leave tomorrow and cover your life for months while something better materializes. That doesn't mean you become careless or reckless. It means you're negotiating from a position of actual strength instead of quiet desperation. This internal shift changes everything about how you show up. You ask for the raise you've earned because the worst answer is no, and you'll be fine either way. You push back on demands that cross a line because the consequences don't scare you the same way. You pursue new options because you can absorb some risk now. Here's the wild part. Most of the time, you don't even need to actually use it. Just knowing it exists changes your entire energy at work. You come across as more confident, more direct, more willing to take on hard things. And when you show up differently, people notice. Better assignments follow, more visibility, and eventually more income. It becomes a loop that feeds itself. More confidence leads to more success, which builds more wealth, which creates more options, which creates more confidence. But here's where most people blow it, and I watch this happen constantly. They hit $20,000, feel that psychological unlock, and immediately spend it on something that feels deserved. A new car, an expensive trip, a house they can't quite afford. Don't do that. That $20,000 is not a reward. It's the foundation of your entire financial future. It's the seed that compounds into something life-changing if you give it the time it needs. And this brings up something that might make you laugh or cringe depending on where you are right now. The average person will spend more on their car over their lifetime than it would cost to reach complete financial independence. Between payments, insurance, upkeep, and fuel, most people are spending $600 to $800 every single month on transportation. Over 40 years, that's $400,000 or more just to move between locations. Meanwhile, the same people wonder why retirement savings feel impossible. The moment a new car leaves the dealership, it drops roughly 20% in value. So you're not just spending money, you're actively destroying wealth. Contrast that with investing the same amount in a diversified portfolio, where instead of watching value disappear, you're watching it compound. Cars are emotional purchases. I get it. You want something reliable, something that looks right, something that signals that you're doing well. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but you should understand what you're trading away. That monthly payment might feel like success. It's actually functioning as a wealth drain. This is exactly where having $20,000 shifts your perspective on major purchases. Instead of, can I handle the monthly payment, you start thinking, what is this actually costing me in potential? A $30,000 car isn't just $30,000, it's $30,000 that could compound to over $200,000 in an investment account over 20 years. Suddenly, driving a reliable used car stops feeling like a sacrifice. It starts feeling like a deliberate choice that's funding your eventual freedom. And here's the beautiful irony in all of it. The person driving the brand new car is probably quietly stressed about money. The person driving the older model with a paid-off title is building wealth and sleeping better. This way of thinking extends to every major financial call you make. Housing, education, travel, how you spend your time. Everything runs through the lens of real cost versus real value. Not in a way that kills all enjoyment, but in a way that makes your spending intentional rather than accidental. And here's something that might genuinely surprise you. Once you start thinking this way, you often realize you didn't actually want half the things you thought you did. That bigger apartment? The extra space would be nice, but is it worth setting your timeline back by 5 years? That expensive hobby? It's enjoyable, but there are probably ways to get the same satisfaction for far less. This isn't about becoming someone who never enjoys anything. It's about becoming someone who makes conscious choices about where their money goes, instead of watching it disappear into things that don't actually matter to them. $20,000 won't make you wealthy overnight, but it will permanently shift how you think about money, opportunity, and what's actually possible. It's the line between surviving and building, between reacting and designing. Start moving toward that number now, because the version of you a decade from now is depending on the choices you make today. Trust me, they'll appreciate it.